Sean todos bienvenidos a la segunda Feria Virtual del Libro Oserco, Evolución Educativa en la Enseñanza de Idiomas, que se estará llevando a cabo los días 20, 21 y 22 de abril. Mi nombre es Ludmila Kariakin y los estaré acompañando durante este evento tan importante para Importadora Oserco. Durante esta feria virtual contaremos con la participación de representantes de prestigiosas editoriales reconocidas a nivel mundial como Pearson, National Geographic, Merriam-Webster y Sadler, las cuales nos presentarán los textos educativos más novedosos del mercado nacional e internacional. Cada día presentarán su material didáctico para cada etapa educativa. Hoy miércoles estará enfocado a niños de preescolar y primaria. Mañana jueves estarán presentando novedades para el segmento de estudiantes de edades de bachillerato o teenagers. El día viernes cerraremos con el segmento de adultos que engloba productos para universidades, academias, ESP, entre otros. Ante todo, queremos mencionarles la trayectoria de distribuidora Oserco, y es que llevan más de 25 años apoyando la educación de Venezuela a través de la distribución de libros en físico y contenido digital para el aprendizaje de idiomas. Además, ofrecen asesorías de calidad para colegios y profesores con la finalidad de satisfacer las necesidades tanto de alumnos como del personal docente. También cuenta con material para la formación técnica y universitaria de la mano de reconocidos editoriales como Pearson, Sadler, Scholastic, Cengage, Nat Geo y Merriam-Webster. Su pilar fundamental desde 1996 es la educación, siendo la mejor herramienta para el desarrollo de cada individuo. Se encuentra ubicado en la ciudad de Caracas, Venezuela, con el propósito de brindar un servicio completo con miras a mejorar la calidad educativa en nuestro país. No obstante, queremos invitarlos a participar en nuestro concurso siguiéndonos en nuestras redes sociales, @OsercoBooks. Solo debes acompañarnos vía Zoom durante estos 3 días y seguirnos en la cuenta de Instagram. Sin más que agregar, queremos darle la bienvenida a nuestra primera invitada. Ella es la representante de la editorial Pearson, Xochitl Mendoza, Educational Coach for Pearson Central America and the Caribbean. She holds a bachelor's degree in English and translation and has a virtual master trainer certificate issued by Pearson. Xochitl has worked for Pearson for 3 years and has been part of the private and public projects that involve professional development, educational methodologies and strategies, and the implementation of new programs and platforms. So welcome, Xochitl.
Hi, thank you, Ms. Ludmila. Welcome, everybody. How are you? I hope you're all doing great. I am here from Panama, and I'm very happy and excited to show you the innovation we have. We're going to be working today with 6 programs or solutions that we have to offer that are up to date with old technology and obviously aligned to a global standard. That's the global scale of English. That would be our backbone. Just a brief message to let you know that the presentation we're sharing is protected by copyright and it cannot be reproduced by any way or form without previous consent by Pearson. Next. Please, next slide. Okay. So guys, we're going to start with our product presentation. And in our agenda we have, please, next slide. We're going to work with my Disney Stars and Friends. We're going to see a little bit about it. We're going to check out the Disney readers, Rise and Shine, and the family right, sounds right, and grammar right. Okay, guys, let's talk about my Disney Stars and Friends. As you can see, this is a collaboration we've made with Disney, with all the characters that all our kids know. This is a series, my Disney Stars and Friends, is a series for pre-primary. And it's going to cover 2 to 5 periods of English per week. It is based, of course, on the global scale of English, and we're going to base it on a granular global standard. This global scale of English is aligned to the Common European Framework, so it's based on this wonderful standard that we all teachers work with. Please, next slide. It's going to have a resources printed and digital, and all teachers are going to have, of course, the teaching notes, all the access to the resources printed and digital. The teacher is going to be able to work with story cards, picture cards, posters, and we're going to align all this content with these beautiful characters that are going to be very catchy for our students. We're going to be able to also work on some values, critical thinking skills. We're going to implement audio visuals to get our students' attention. And all these resources are going to be found in our Pearson English portal account. And the teacher is going to, of course, will have all the resources from the teacher and the student. Please, next slide. Let's talk about the components that we're going to find in My Disney Stars and Friends. The student is going to have a student book and a workbook. And the nice part is that he and she can use the resources online. It's going to be, it's going to add an audio so the student can follow the stories in My Disney Stars and Friends. It's going to be a great journey for our students to not only learn the language, but also create a sense of collaboration, creativity, critical thinking with all the content that we have in the series. Please, next slide. Just to talk to you a little bit about My Disney Stars and Friends and what makes it an awesome series. We're going to find that it's very important for students to belong to the classroom, right? So we're going to try to make them feel aware of their position in their school, with their families, with their classmates. They're going to be able to build some self-awareness with some activities. So as you can see, it's not only language learning or language teaching, but it's also going to develop these future skills that are so important right now for students to feel comfortable with them in the world. It's very simple, very flexible, and of course provides every single resource necessary for both teachers and students, and obviously parents. So let's continue with our next slide, please. Now let's talk about the Disney Kids Reader. This is a complement to the series students could be using, regardless of a specific series for primary school. These readers are aligned to the Global Scale of English and the Common European Framework. So it means that everything they work with the teacher in the classroom will be backed up by the reader. This is a reader that is going to be using Disney characters, as you can see. It has a lot of content and activities that are relevant for students to their levels. And of course, it's going to be very supporting regarding language learning, reading skills, and also the resources online and printed. Let's continue. Now, the Disney Kids Readers, there are 6 levels, and we find 36 titles in total. Each level is going to have 6 readers, and it's going to cover from 16 to 48 in the Global Scale of English, and it's going to cover a pre-A1 to B1. It's in American English, and it's very flexible. It's going to cover 1 hour per week. So it's going to be this special complement to any English language course. It's very eye-catchy and very motivating for the students to read. Here, the very nice part is that it's going to work for private and also English language schools. and it's going to be specifically for 6 to 12-year-old students. Next slide. And these are the components. Let's check out the components for our students. As I told you, each level, we have 6, has 6 readers, and all the readers have digital and printed components. The students are going to have the printed components because we know that it's very nice for us to work on that experience of having a book and grabbing the book with their hands. And also their students are going to have the audiobooks on a platform, our Pearson English portal, which is going to have the reader, and the students will be able to have their reader, listen to the audiobook, and of course, practice their reading skills. These readers have activities before, during, and after reading that is going to be very interesting for them to go over these reading process. And of course, they're going to be able to answer reading comprehension questions. They will be using the workbook as well to complement that reader. And in the bookshelf, the student will also be able to see the book, so they can take it everywhere, even if they don't have the printed version. So that's very nice. Please, next slide. Let's check out the resources for the teacher. The teacher is going to have all the readers per level. It is also on a printed version and online version. The teacher will have the teaching notes to work with the readers. The platform contains the audiobook for the teacher also to play the audio in the classroom or out of the classroom, online as well. And there are activities for before, during, and after reading. And the teacher is going to have specific ideas on how to work on each area, what questions to make, and what learning objectives aligned, of course, to the Global Scale of English and Common European Framework they are developing. So they will know exactly what their students are aiming for. Yeah. Next slide. Let's check out now Rise and Shine. We've seen the Disney series, and now Rise and Shine, it's going to be a series that's brand new, and it's for primary. It's going to cover 7 levels, and we have 7 levels, and it is very nice to have a beginning level that can match our students' competencies. Because we know that after 2 years of pandemic, we might find students that even though they've been 3 years in pre-primary, they don't know how to read and write. So Rise and Shine provides that extra starter level that's going to be focused more on foundational skills. It's going to work a lot of phonics, phonemic awareness, and of course, writing. It's going to start working with students from 0. So there are 2 entry levels. There is the starter and the first level. And if the students are learning to read, the school or institution can choose this starter or learning to read level. And if the students have a very nice level of, reading and writing, then they can start from level 1. And well, all the levels, level 1, start with level 2. We try to work on the students on the objectives for that level. Of course, focusing ourselves if they are still learning to read and write. It's going to be for primary school, 6 to 12-year-old students. It's for private and government primary schools. And of course, for teachers that have a very demanding schedule. Let's continue. Next slide. We're going to talk about the key pillars. It's important for you to know that all of these levels are aligned to a Common European Framework and Global Scale of English objective. So it's going to be very, very precise with the learning objectives that they are going to be working with. But besides that, we're going to have a clear understanding on the students' progress. They're going to have accessible learning outcomes, things that they can really reach. It's going to give the students a sense of purpose. We need to have clear that our students need motivation to really get to their goals. So from the very beginning, they will know what they'll have to do, and they will be able to reflect on whether they have obtained that outcome or not. It also includes special students. It's a very supportive program for these students that need a little help, and creates a sense of global citizenship. And as I mentioned before with the pre-primary series, My Disney Stars and Friends, this series also works on global citizenship and self-awareness, values, and also future skills: collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking, self-awareness, and leadership that we all know that we have to develop in our kids today. And of course, it is relatable and engaging because it has very nice characters that they are going to look at and also make this contrast, with their real life experiences and the characters in the book. Next slide, please. Let's talk about the components now. As I have mentioned, the Pearson English Portal is our star online. So it's going to hold the digital resources for both teachers and students. And we, of course, have a printed version of the resources. Of course, we're going to provide all the notes for the teachers, these teaching strategies to work in the classroom for communication, collaboration, creativity. The teacher is going to have the extra resources printed for picture cards and story cards and the posters. And all these resources are online in our Pearson English Portal. So you're not going to miss anything. And I like about what I like the most about the Pearson English Portal is that it's going to hold a presentation tool that can be downloaded, and the teacher is going to have a lesson flow. So it's going to give everything the teacher needs and to make the student shine in the classroom. So next slide, please. Now let's check out the students' components. It's going to be a student book, a workbook, and a busy book. And you might say, okay, what is a busy book? The student book and the workbook, of course, they complement each other. But if there's still a need to have an extra, very interactive activity, we have these busy book that the institution may buy or ask the student to buy or not, just to have this extra help. Let's say that you have an extra hour to develop communication, critical thinking, or activities that are interactive. The students may have the basic book so they can work with the basic book and, of course, work on some communication in the classroom guided by the teacher. All these resources provide extra audio visuals in the Pearson English Portal, meaning student book, workbook, digital activities that can be assigned by the teacher. The teacher can see the reports and can reassign the activities just to consolidate the learning. And of course, extra activities in case our kids want to go ahead and practice with the content online. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about the Wright family. The Wright family, it's a perfect complement to the English language experience, teaching experience. You're going to find a series for phonics, a series for reading, and a series for grammar. Next slide. Let's talk about Read Write first. Let's talk about reading. This is a series that is based in reading comprehension and will also add writing skills. Even though it is specifically for reading and writing, it's going to add also the other skills, listening, speaking, and you're going to find that it's a very nice series because it has 38 lessons. Don't get scared. Each level has 38 lessons, but they're going to cover reading comprehension strategies and also writing lessons just to complement. And you're going to have listening and speaking activities as well to complement, of course, this reading comprehension series. It's going to have 6 levels for primary school, and it's going to be from 20 to 58 in the global scale of English. That would be a pre-A1 to a B1 plus in the Common European Framework of Reference. The teachers and students are going to have a glossary of words, a listening and speaking activity in each lesson, and it's going to have a wide range of engaging topics in this series. Next slide. These components, or this series has components, of course, for teachers and students, printed and digital, and all the students are going to have the student book and resources online in the Pearson English portal. These resources are interactive, and the teacher is going to have the teacher edition with the teacher notes, daily lessons, all the answer keys, and extra assessment package, 38 cue cards for speaking activities, and an active teach that is a presentation tool. All of the series from the Right family have presentation tools that are awesome to work on a very nice lesson flow. It is so flexible that the teacher can go back and reteach whatever the students need to reinforce, or they can continue working on the series as it is. So all the three series from the Right family are very flexible. Now let's talk about Sounds Right. Next. Okay, now let's talk about Sounds Right. As you saw, Read Right covers primary school. Sounds Right is going to work from kindergarten to 6th grade, and it's going to cover from a 10 to a 48 in the global scale of English, and that will be a pre-A1 to a B1. And I always mention this because it's very important to know that all these series are based on the global scale of English and the Common European Framework, and they're going to be very specific with the learning objectives our students and teachers are developing in the classroom. This series has 8 units, and each lesson or unit is going to last 5 weeks. It's going to have a thematic booklet. It's going to have something extra there in the student book, which our kid can take out and maybe read on his or her own. And it's going to be able to work on the reading skills, even though it's a sound or a phonics program. And of course, every unit has an evaluation. There's going to be a page for a pronunciation key and alphabet cards. Next slide. So as I mentioned with Read Right, printed, also digital resources online, the kid is going to have his or her student book, and it's going to see all the resources online with extra activities that are assignable, and the teacher can see the reports. The teacher will have all the answer keys, the assessments, the daily lesson plan, and picture cards, cue cards, and the presentation tool. Next slide. And the final one is Grammar Right, just to complement the Right family. This one is a series based on grammar. Of course, we all love grammar. So we're going to complement reading and phonics with grammar. This is going to cover the 6 primary levels, and it's going to go from 20 to 57 in the global scale of English, would be an A1 to B1. It's going to work for 5 hours of instruction. Every level has 186 pages, 27 lessons, and 9 reviews. All these series or these solutions, because they provide solutions to the teacher, students, and all the educational community needs. All these provide printed and digital components, and the digital components also are assignable, and the teacher will be able to check the reports, and parents from the student point of view will be able to see the reports as well. Let's go to the next slide. Next one. So all the series in the right family work in the Pearson English portal. You're going to have a Reader Plus, that's the ebook. The student will have the actual page of the book, all the audio visuals embedded on these pages. There is an option where the student can input his or her answer, take notes, download these notes, and work with these notes to study for the test or the assessment. The teacher will have the active teacher presentation tool to have a lesson flow with all the notes, and we'll also be able to have a scoreboard, a dictionary embedded in the active teach. So if the student comes up with a question of a word, the teacher can look it up, and we'll have it immediately with pronunciation, definition, and examples. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Next slide. My name is Xochitl Mendoza, and I am an educational coach for Pearson. I am at your service, and I am very happy to be here with you today. Don't doubt in contacting me and my peers from Pearson. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Ludmila.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Muy interesante lo que comenta Xochitl. ¿Qué les pareció? Espero lo hayan disfrutado. Si tienen alguna pregunta sobre esta o cualquiera de las presentaciones que vamos a tener hoy, la pueden dejar en nuestro chat. Al final de esta jornada les estaremos respondiendo todas sus inquietudes. Les cuento que Oserco actualmente tiene libros para el aprendizaje de idiomas con precios de regalo. Pueden ver su catálogo en su página web www.osercobooks.com. También puedes comunicarte con ellos al 0424-324-7833 o por correo electrónico osercocaracas@gmail.com. Estas direcciones de correo electrónico y teléfono estarán visibles en el chat para que puedan tomar nota. Recuerden que tenemos un concurso para ustedes. Solo debes participar en nuestra feria vía Zoom durante estos 3 días y seguirnos en Instagram, @osercobooks. Ahora nos acompaña Nicole Stephen. Nicole is a National Academic Consultant with Sadler School. She is a licensed teacher, certified in grades 1 to 6 and special education from the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Nicole has worked for Sadler for over 6 years, first as a sales representative in the New England area, and more recently as a national consultant supporting teachers as they learn about Sadler's academic programs. So let's welcome Nicole. Nicole, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. All right, thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. I am really excited to represent Sadler and introduce you to 2 exciting programs that we have available for the elementary school students. So I'll start with the slide deck, please. Thank you. So I'm first going to talk about From Phonics to Reading today. That'll be the first program that I introduced to you. That's available for grades K through 3. And then I also want to make you aware of vocabulary workshop tools for comprehension. And this is available for grades 1 through 5. Next slide, please. We are ecstatic to let you know that From Phonics to Reading has been rated all green by edreports.org. edreports.org is an outside independent agency that rates educational materials based on expectations and usability. And as you can see on the slide, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade has been rated all green in both categories. Next slide, please. So From Phonics to Reading is based on what Wiley Blevins calls the 7 key characteristics of strong phonics instruction. And those are readiness skills, scope and sequence, blending, dictation, word awareness, high frequency words, and reading connected text. And all of these characteristics are really the underpinning of the program. So throughout the weekly routine, you're going to see a focus on blending, dictation, a routine introducing high frequency words, and a really tight connection between the connected text that students are reading and the skill that you're introducing for the week. Next slide, please. As far as components for instruction, students will have a student edition work text. It's beautiful and color-coded, providing students with a really rich and engaging opportunity to work in the work text. Teachers will have a teacher's edition. This is providing all of the guidance that teachers need in the wrap. And online on SadlyerConnect.com, you'll find a robust selection of digital instructional resources that are designed to support the teacher and engage the student. Next slide, please. As far as student components, these are the manipulatives for that multimodal instruction that's really important for the foundational skills programs for K-3. So in the kindergarten through third grade book, in the very back of the book, students will have access to the uppercase and lowercase letter cards that they need, the picture cards, word cards, the take-home books, so the mini books that students need to work with day after day, week after week. Those are able to be cut out from the book. And of course, all of these are available as Blackline Masters on SadlyerConnect.com. Next slide, please. One of the most important components of From Phonics to Reading is a systematic scope and sequence. So this was really designed to promote early reading and writing. And I know that this is too small to really dive into, but it's a great way for you to see the entire scope of the K through 3 sequence. So the way that the scope and sequence is designed is it isn't a stair-stepper approach. So we want students building from the simple to the complex in a way that takes advantage of previous learning. We've separated any confusing sounds, any confusing letters for students. And we also have a built-in review and repetition cycle. So a really intentional scope and sequence is going to lead to early reading and writing success and also lead to mastery, which is the goal. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, can you continue? Thank you. And one more, thanks. All right, so as far as the student edition, you'll see that this is really engaging and provides students with active and thought-provoking activities. In kindergarten, we do address those readiness skills. So we know that not all students come into kindergarten having that alphabet recognition. So there is a component for alphabet recognition in the kindergarten book. And we also are addressing those key 5 reading development components, so phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. What you'll see throughout the program also is we're helping students develop a word awareness. We want them constantly thinking and talking about how words work. And the program is designed to promote mastery, not just exposure to a skill. We don't just expose students to a skill and move on. There's review and repetition. Next slide. There are going to be 30 lessons in each level, and each lesson is presented in a 5-day instructional sequence. There's a cumulative assessment after every lesson that's designed to help inform instruction and next steps. Next slide, please. Here's an example of a lesson from first grade. And this is a really engaging lesson where you will introduce the targeted skill for the week at the very top of the page. There are a series of blending lines in which the teacher will chorally read with students. The blending lines are differentiated. So if you have a targeted group of students that you need to work with on a more one-to-one basis, you can use some of the differentiated blending lines during small group instruction. So incredibly flexible to meet the needs of all of your students. There's an opportunity for review and an opportunity for challenge for students who are ready to move forward in the scope and sequence in the phonics program. Next slide, please. We also have those dynamic digital resources that I mentioned. So here's a screenshot from SadlyerConnect.com. These are interactive. You can assign them to students. Students can interact with them online. The teacher can also use them to lead instruction. So in this case, the blending lines, they mirror that of what's in the student edition. And you can highlight for students here that we're moving from ran to rain. So then the known to the new, plan to plain, and so on. Next slide. Also happening on day 1 is an opportunity for students to be introduced to those high frequency words. So those are those irregular words in the English language that we have to introduce explicitly to students. We do this using a routine called Read, Spell, Write. Students also have an opportunity in first grade to immediately apply their new skill in the context of reading. So they have a connected text that's going to feature some of the high frequency words as well as the targeted skill for the week. And the all important word sort. So we have students doing a closed word sort and an open word sort. We want to see how they're thinking about words and what they think about how words work and what those spelling patterns look like that we've introduced them to. Next slide. On day 2, some additional engaging activities. You'll first start with some review and repetition. And then under Think and Write, we have our opportunity for dictation. So here's a chance for you to introduce students to that dictation routine where you sound out and segment the word, the image. So starting at the top with the picture of a chain, and students will segment that word into the Alcona boxes below. And on the right-hand side, students will work with those manipulatives and that multimodal work to build new words, making a very specific word list that correlates to the words you front-loaded to them on day 1. Next slide, please. On day 3, students have the opportunity to engage in that really exciting decodable text. So these are meant to be highly engaging. The pictures should be relevant and interesting to students, again, including those high-frequency words as well as that targeted skill for the week. And we always incorporate word study. So this example of the word study is focusing on compound words. Next slide. After some review and repetition, day 4 is a really important day in From Phonics to Reading. We follow the gradual release model. So day 4 is when we want to transition the heavy lifting to students. It's an opportunity for independent practice, and we want to see if students are able to apply what they have learned. So during that independent practice, students do that read and write activity, and then they have an opportunity to work on fluency to reinforce the skills and the high frequency words. Next slide. And day 5 of our review and repetition cycle. So here's where the application happens and where the learning sticks. Students have an opportunity for this word ladder. It's another great word awareness activity. This happens only in 1st grade, the word ladder. It's a great chance for teachers to engage students with some manipulation of the individual sounds and letters. And on the Write About It section for the writing extension, here's where students will go back and reread that decodable text and apply what they've learned in the context of the writing. Teachers check for consistent application of the spelling pattern. Teachers check for comprehension of the connected text and use this to inform their next steps. Next slide, please. There's also an opportunity for a cumulative assessment on day 5. Students are put into small groups where you're going to cycle through small groups of children every 3 to 4 weeks, knowing that if you didn't have the opportunity to assess them on this particular skill this week, you will get to them within the next 3 to 4 weeks. You can then compare results. So you'll take your cumulative assessment and record that on a student fluency report, compare results, and determine if students have either had a decay of learning or are making adequate progress. Next slide, please. Our comprehensive assessments that accompany From Phonics to Reading, these are designed to be done over an extended period of time. We want you to be able to ensure mastery. And we are evaluating the skills on 2 factors. So you'll notice that there are opportunities for you to check for accuracy and fluency. These are also designed to prevent learning decay. So you're able to monitor students' progress and then determine if maybe they did have the skill on week 1 and there has been a decay of learning over the following weeks. These are also designed to help support differentiated instruction. Next slide. Our interactive instructional resources are, again, on savvyconnect.com. It's a really robust platform that is going to include assessments, fluency sentences, interactive instructional resources, a variety of Blackline masters that are specific to different grade levels, and suggestions for home connections and family letters. So if you're looking to strengthen that homeschool connection, we do have resources available for that as well. Next slide. We are very excited that this July, we are launching our interactive practice activities that are going to accompany all grade levels. So we're adding 454 interactive practice activities for levels K through C. This is going to give students additional opportunities to practice their blending, spelling, and reading comprehension skills. Each activity has a how-to video. And again, the interactive practice availability is coming in July as part of a bundle with From Phonics to Reading. Next slide, please. All right, so on to the second program that I'd like to walk you through, Vocabulary Workshop Tools for Comprehension. Vocabulary Workshop is a research-based vocabulary program that it identifies the words in context. It's systematic and explicit and includes an assessment component as well. Next slide. The program is going to introduce the vocabulary through contextual learning. So we introduce all of the vocabulary words in a passage. It's designed to increase comprehension. So as students learn explicitly the words that are embedded in the program, as well as the word learning strategies, they're able to determine the meaning of unfamiliar words as they encounter more complex text. You'll find that there are multiple exposures throughout the student practice exercises. That's intentional. We want to make sure that students have a chance to acquire those vocabulary words, and that takes about 8 to 14 exposures. And there's an opportunity for word study, as well as review and application. Next slide. Components for student instruction include a print student edition, where students will complete all the student practice exercises as well have access to the passage. There is a teacher's edition that's going to be annotated to provide teachers all of that support that they need for implementation. If you would like to assess students on their vocabulary acquisition, we have printed test booklets. And there's also an interactive edition. So this program can be delivered completely online. Students access all of the practice exercises, all of the assessments, and there's a custom assessment system that teachers can access as well. So that's all found on SouthEarConnect.com. Next slide. We begin by introducing the words in context. So this is an example of contextual learning. So students are introduced to the words in the context of this passage. Here you can model using context clues for students to determine the meaning of unfamiliar words. You can pre-teach some of the words if you want to scaffold this for students. And again, this is very flexible. So you can have students come to class having already read the passage. It's a great opportunity for academic and tier 2 words to be introduced to students explicitly in the context of this passage. Next slide, please. Next slide. We always start with the definitions immediately after introducing the words in context. So this is an opportunity for collaboration. We want students talking about the definitions. We want them to talk about the real world definition of the word. We give the phonetic and diacritical indications as well as the pronunciation key. And you can see the little speech bubbles. This allows students to turn and talk. Next slide. We also introduce students to synonyms and antonyms. So this is a great way to increase the number of words that you're introducing students to help them increase the vocabulary. It helps with their clarity and precision in their writing and their communication. Next slide. Another practice activity is completing the sentence. So students are using context clues to determine the word meaning. This is scaffolded. So you have the little bubble box where we provide a set of lesson words, and students need to pick the word from the box that completes the sentence. So there are multiple meaning words in a variety of context here. So students are determining the meaning of the word from the context clues in the sentence. Next slide. We also want to make sure that we're introducing students to Greek and Latin roots and giving them an opportunity to work with word associations within the program. So thinking about the relationship between words, this really helps students focus on the meaning of words. It creates a sense of word awareness, curiosity about how words work. And we also give students an opportunity to drill into those common word roots. This helps them break down words and helps, again, determine the meaning of unfamiliar words as they encounter more complex text. Next slide. A second reading passage is always included in each lesson. This contains multiple meaning words from the unit. It's a chance for students to read a related text. So this is related in theme or context to the opening passage. There's a series of questions that students need to answer. They're either vocabulary questions or text-dependent questions. There's a grade level grammar connection in the reading passage. We also have students do a write your own exercise. So we really want students to be able to explain their thinking in writing and use some of the vocabulary words that you've introduced them to respond. Next slide. Explicit word learning strategies are embedded in the word study section. So this is going to occur within each chapter. We want students to be exposed to shades of meaning, connotation, denotation, prefix, suffix. These are all ways for students to determine the meaning of unfamiliar words. Next slide. Reviews are a really important component of vocabulary workshop. So the review is an opportunity for students to solidify their learning and understanding of the words. Without the review, retention is unlikely. So this is a great way for you to monitor student progress. If you need to go back and do some additional review, that could also be a data information point. And test prep is designed to mirror that of standardized tests that you might be familiar with. Next slide, please. A cumulative review after every 6 units, that's going to make sure that students are retaining the words in their long-term memory. Again, without the review, retention is unlikely. Next slide. As far as assessments, we do have the option for unit test booklets. Online at sadlyconnect.com, there are interactive quizzes that students can use to provide a practice opportunity before the official assessment. There's also a custom test generator that's available online. This is a way for teachers to create any type of resource that they're looking for, whether it's additional practice, extra credit, exit tickets, enrichment, reteaching. It really is unlimited and incredibly flexible. Again, that's all available online and customizable. Next slide. We also have the availability of the differentiated reading passages. So the differentiated reading passages are really a key way for teachers to have students of all learning abilities access the text. So the differentiated reading passage is going to be the same passage with the same vocabulary words. It's just at a slightly lower lexile level. Students will not know that they've been provided a differentiated passage that's at that lower lexile level. Teachers can either print this off from online or they can assign it to individual students based on need. So the differentiated reading passage is brand new to the program this year. I mentioned the interactive quizzes. Those are great opportunities for practice. The pathways to the interactive quizzes are easy, free, no passwords needed for students. We want them to engage in a review and repetition of the words. And we also have an audio glossary for the taught words. So this is the iWords function. It will give the pronunciation of the word, provide an image for students to make a connection, and a definition, as well as an opportunity for students to hear this word used in a sentence. Games and study aids are also going to be available online. A quick note about the interactive edition. Many schools, particularly starting in grade 3 and up, prefer the interactive edition because it really engages students with exciting interactive games and activities to provide those multiple exposures to the academic words. So the interactive edition is something that students access on sadlyconnect.com. It allows teachers to assign all of the practice items to students and they can monitor progress along the way. So everything has been designed to auto score. Teachers have access to a variety of real-time reports. They can adjust instruction or simply monitor progress over time. I mentioned that custom assessment system. However, it's incredibly flexible and a feature that teachers really know and come to love once they've begun to use it. Next slide, please. So we're really excited about those interactive editions. I want to make sure that you know that this is available for a free trial. So if you are interested in learning more about the Vocabulary Workshop program, you certainly are welcome to explore that through a free trial with your sales representative. And we also have preview available of From Phonics to Reading as well. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you very much. That was amazing. Thank you for your presentation. Seguimos. ¿Qué les ha parecido hasta ahora la jornada? Interesante, ¿cierto? Recuerden que tenemos un espacio especial para responder todas sus dudas. Pueden dejarlas en el chat y luego estaremos respondiendo. No olviden participar en el concurso. Es muy fácil. Solo deben acompañarnos durante estos 3 días de feria virtual y seguir a Oserco en su cuenta de Instagram, @OsercoBooks. Y no dejen de visitar su página web, www.osercobooks.com. Allí podrán ver sus catálogos de libros con precios de regalos en todas las categorías. Ahora le damos la bienvenida a Linda Wood. Let me give you a little bit about her bio. She's a senior editor and the print products manager at Merriam-Webster. We're very proud to have you here. She has been a member of the editorial department for over 30 years. Linda studied English at the University of Massachusetts and Amherst and has a degree in law from Western New England University. She lives in rural Western Massachusetts and enjoys spending time with her husband and 2 sons, doing crossword puzzles, gardening, and playing pickleball. Welcome, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ludmila. Thank you for everyone for having me, and thank you all for attending. She mentioned that I like to play pickleball. If you've never heard of pickleball, think of it as a cross between ping pong and tennis, and it's a lot of fun to play. I hope it's popular down where you are too. Again, my name is Linda Wood, and I'm a senior editor and the print products manager at Merriam-Webster. And this afternoon, I'd like to introduce you to just some of the many products that Merriam-Webster offers for young children, including vocabulary building tools, most especially dictionaries, and also other educational references. Next slide, please. To start off, I'd like to talk about our new Merriam-Webster Kids brand products. Merriam-Webster Kids is a new initiative through which we're creating engaging and colorful books for children in conjunction with What on Earth Publishing. The purpose of these products, as is set out in our mission statement, is to instill in children a love of language and learning that will stay with them as they grow and move through their educational journey. Next slide, please. So coming out in July as the latest in the Merriam-Webster Kids line is our Ready for School Words, 1,000 Words for Big Kids. Excuse me. It's written by Hannah Campbell, an author based in New York, and illustrated by Sarah Rice of the UK. Of course, it's reviewed and approved by the editors at Merriam-Webster as well. This book is designed for children ages 3 to 6, so very beginning readers, either getting ready to enter school or very early in their school careers. Next slide, please. Ready for School Words introduces readers to 5 families from different backgrounds, in addition to other members of the community. I apologize, some of the illustrations that are shown here were not available in final form for me to use in these presentations, and the final illustrations will be, some of them will be much more colorful and perfected. Next slide, please. The book follows these families as they go through their day. So readers learn vocabulary for the everyday objects that the characters encounter and the activities that they engage in as they go throughout the various activities of their day. As you can see here, starting their day having breakfast. And all of the objects in the kitchen are called out with labels, and certain activities are also described. Next slide, please. So the characters are shown in places and taking part in activities that your children will be familiar with. Readers will be drawn into the scene and will be able to identify with what the characters are seeing and doing and experiencing. The scenes are filled with funny details to entertain children, like the little boy you can see making a mustache with the yarn that he's using for his art project. And again, objects and actions are labeled with age-appropriate vocabulary for children to learn. Next slide, please. So Ready for School Words, which I just showed you, is for the earliest level beginning readers. For children who are a little older, oops, sorry, I am missing a slide here, but for children who are a little older, we have a series of age-appropriate dictionaries. The first is Merriam-Webster's first dictionary. It's for ages 5 through 7 and grades kindergarten through 2. It introduces readers to 3,000 words enhanced by 700 colorful illustrations by the beloved children's author and illustrator, Ruth Heller. The first dictionary is not a dictionary in the standard way we think of dictionaries. The purpose of the first dictionary is to introduce children to and familiarize them with the kinds of information about words and language that they can find in a dictionary. So it's sort of a learning dictionary, while at the same time, it's inviting enough that they can browse through the pages and enjoy its engaging content. It's meant to be the kind of book that you could sit and read to a child as you would a storybook, as opposed to something that they go to for reference. Next slide, please. Every alphabetical section of the dictionary starts with what we call a letter opener page that features a rhyme about the sounds that the letter makes and a joke playing on the particular letter of the alphabet. So for the letter A, there's a picture of the animal in English that's called an alligator. And then there's a corresponding picture at the entry for alligator, as you can see. And there's a rhyme describing the sounds the letter A makes and a joke featuring the letter A. Next slide, please. I hope you can see this. I think it's kind of small, but I'll try to explain. On each page, the entries, there are entries with various features. Each entry shows the entry word in bright red letters and provides the word's function, whether it's a noun, a verb, an adjective, etc. Of course, a lot of words have more than one function, and they're labeled in the order in which they're discussed in the entry block. Because this is a dictionary for beginners, it discusses rather than defines the word the way an ordinary dictionary would. This one it discusses words in engaging and age-appropriate language that children will enjoy learning about it. It offers example sentences showing how the word is used. Many entries show related words, such as the word spaceship at the entry for space. Some entries offer what we call bonus words, which may be synonyms or antonyms, or in the case of the entry for spaghetti, the bonus words are words for different kinds of pasta, like ravioli, fettuccine, linguine, etc. Next slide, sorry. There are word histories, such as this one for the entry for laugh, explaining how the word laugh came into English. Many of them focus on Latin roots, which introduces children very early on to the vocabulary building idea of root words that come from Latin, particularly from Latin, from Greek, from some other languages. But as I said before, this is not a typical dictionary for older students. So while it contains many of the informational and learning features that are found in a higher level dictionary, there are also features designed to foster a love of language, which is what we want them to do at this early age. So there are stories that may be from children's literature, or fables, or fairy tales, or even some stories that are original, written for this book. There are poems, which may be by well-known poets or maybe nursery rhymes. And many, again, were written just for this book, like this poem that appears at the entry for Leaf. Thank you for the new slide. As I pointed out earlier, there are jokes, and at entries, they feature the entry word that is shown in that entry. There are cross-references called Look It Up notes to direct readers to another entry with more information that they might find interesting. The related words, the word histories, the head scratchers, and the cross-references are each indicated by a particular icon. For related words, it's a chatty parrot. For word histories, it's a wise owl. For head scratchers, it's a monkey scratching its head. And for Look It Up notes, it's a bookworm moving its way through the pages. So the first dictionary serves to educate and provide information and to foster a love of language at an early age. Next slide, please. For the next level reader, the primary school reader, we have our elementary dictionary. It's for ages 8 to 11, grades 3 through 5. Next slide, please. This is a more traditional dictionary, but as you can see, it's still very colorful for the age group. The letter sections alternate between orange, green, blue, and purple color schemes. There are over 37,000 entry words and 900 illustrations, photographs, and diagrams. The entries explain in clear language the different meanings of the entry word, in addition to the pronunciation and parts of speech. Next slide, please. Since this is a book for new readers, each alpha section, or alphabetical section, we call them alpha sections, opens with the sounds of paragraph, discussing the sounds that the particular letter makes. There are word history paragraphs throughout that are selected for interesting word origins, which is a feature that appears in all of our student dictionaries. To help new readers navigate the dictionary, the alphabet runs down the edges of the pages, lowercase on the on the left hand, and uppercase on the right hand. To help them understand how to read the pronunciations that are shown at the words, pronunciation symbols run along the bottom of each page. Next slide, please. There are synonym paragraphs to help beginners increase their vocabulary and distinguish between which synonym appears best at a context. And the synonym paragraphs is another feature of all of our student dictionaries. Cross-references appear at the entries for the words that are discussed in the synonym paragraph, so that the reader knows where they can find additional information. Like the first dictionary, the elementary has head scratchers that point out some of the quirks of the language and can be instructional, but are also a way of adding a little fun to the book. Next slide, please. These are my two favorite features of this book. The word root paragraphs are another vocabulary building tool that focus on Latin and Greek roots and were written especially for this dictionary. Of course, there are cross-references at the entries for the words that appear in the paragraph, so readers know where to find more information. The other feature that I particularly like is the use of over 1,300 quotations from children's literature as usage examples. So instead of your traditional made-up example, we have some from children's literature. They come from over 100 children's books that range from the classics to newly published and award-winning books. A list of the books is quoted and appears at the back of the dictionary for children who might be interested in reading one of the books quoted if they are particularly interested in that particular quote. We do advise parents and teachers to take into account a child's reading and maturity level as they look at these books, as there's a range in difficulty and subject matter of the books quoted. Also in the back of the dictionary, there are sections on the use of punctuation, capital letters and italics, and a section on geographical names and maps. Next slide, please. So we also offer for the same age group, ages 8 through 11, grades 3 through 5, Merriam-Webster's Dictionary for Children. The Dictionary for Children is a large format trade paperback version of the elementary dictionary that I just showed you. It shares a lot of the same content, such as the entry words and definitions, but without some of the features of the elementary and with a soft cover as opposed to a hardcover, so that we can offer it at a lower price point. Next slide, please. The Dictionary for Children is two-color and therefore not quite as colorful as the hardcover elementary, but it does feature nearly 600 illustrations and photographs, the same synonym paragraphs, word histories, and word root paragraphs. The two features that the elementary has that this book does not have, in addition to the colorful pages, are the quotations from children's literature and the head scratchers. In the back of the Dictionary for Children, there are sections again on punctuation, the use of capitals and italics. And in this book, there's also a section explaining words that are frequently confused, misused, and misspelled. There are no maps or a geographical section in this book. Next slide, please. So from Merriam-Webster Kids for this age group, we have a fun, colorful collection of words for each day of the year called Merriam-Webster's Word of the Day. Next slide, please. This book is divided into 12 monthly sections and features a vocabulary word for every day of the year. A definition, a pronunciation, and a part of speech is given, along with a paragraph spotlighting an interesting fact that exemplifies the use of the word that's featured for that day. It's filled with bright, funny, and engaging illustrations. Next slide, please. 18 thematic spreads are scattered throughout the book and feature words relating to a particular subject, such as animals or weather. The one here shown here features words that come from the names of places. Next slide, please. At the end of each month, there's a story using all of the words featured for that month. And using a QR code, children can hear the book read aloud to them by one of 3 celebrity readers. Next slide, please. So the next book I'd like to talk about is our Illustrated Spanish-English Student Dictionary. It's a learning tool for language learners. It's a bi-directional dictionary, English to Spanish, Spanish to English, especially for students in grades 4 through 8 who are learning Spanish or English. There are more than 50,000 translations that include variants, inflected forms, common phrases, synonyms, and definitions. The Illustrated Spanish-English Student Dictionary has an appendix with detailed pronunciation guides to the English words that includes IPA to help English learners learn the correct pronunciation, which, as we all know in English, can be tricky sometimes. Next slide, please. There are more than 1,000 full-color, highly detailed illustrations with Spanish-English or English-Spanish captions, illustrating more than 10,000 additional terms and phrases. Next slide, please. Now, I know that this isn't really a book for reading, but I just would like to show you that we do offer other educational references for students. For example, our atlas created in partnership with Globe Turner that's designed for students in grades 5 through 8. Next slide, please. It includes maps, charts, graphs, and readers will be able to find out geographic information, such as about mountains and bodies of water. Next slide, please. There are also thematic maps for each continent, offering overviews of political divisions, population, land use and resources, climate, and other topics. Next slide, please. And it includes special sections that introduce key geography concepts and global information, including population and other factual information. And there is a could you go back? Thank you. And there's a glossary in the back that defines geographical and foreign terms used throughout the atlas. Okay, now could we move to the next? Thank you. For the students in middle ages, ages 11 through 14, we have our intermediate dictionary. Next slide. And at this level, it starts to resemble a traditional adult dictionary while still using age-appropriate language. And then for older students, we offer our what's called our school dictionary. That's for high school students. And then they would move on to our flagship collegiate dictionary. But you'll hear more about that from my colleague, Peter Sokolowski, in another session. And the last dictionary I'd like to show you is our Merriam-Webster and Garfield dictionary. Next slide, please. This is a book that's very popular with students obviously because of the cartoons. It features almost 64,000 words, defined pronunciations, run-ons, and inflected forms. And it does feature over 400 Garfield cartoons that illustrate chosen entry words on the page. Again, this book is very popular with students. They love the cartoons. And it's a more fun way of getting them to look into a dictionary. Next slide, please. And that's it. That brings my presentation to a close a little early. I hope this has been helpful, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks, Linda. Very interesting and useful. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Camila.
Si se dedican a la enseñanza de idiomas y no estás seguro qué material didáctico se adapta mejor a tus necesidades, Oserco brinda asesorías personalizadas de calidad para colegios y profesores con la finalidad de satisfacer las necesidades tanto de alumnos como personal docente. Recuerden que tenemos un concurso especial para ustedes. Es muy sencillo participar. Solo deben acompañarnos durante estos 3 días de feria virtual y seguir a Oserco en su cuenta de Instagram, @OsercoBooks, @OsercoBooks. Solo eso y ya estarán participando. Ahora nos acompaña el consultor académico de la editorial Nat Geo Learning, Benjamin González. Benjamin González, learning consultant for Colombia and Venezuela, has been involved in language teaching, teacher training, and English program managing for over 6 years, and has been working for Nat Geo Learning for almost 2 years, providing support regarding English programs to schools, universities, and private places. So welcome, Benjamin. Thank you for being here.
Okay, no, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity of being here. Today, okay, this is a lot that I'm going to show you, but I'm really glad to be here. I don't know if you guys can see my screen. I guess you can, yes? Okay, because this is me who's going to be sharing. Okay, so first I'm going to begin with the series that I want to present for very young learners, for these preschoolers. And the first one I'm going to talk about is this beautiful series, which name is Look and See. And as you can see with the name, this is what kids are going to do. They're going to be looking, they're going to be seeing, okay, the things that are in the environment. Remember, we are part of National Geographic Society, so that's the reason why we have the amazing photo that National Geographic has. And this series, okay, these are the main concepts. We're going to, well, kids are going to play, they're going to learn, they're going to make, they're going to connect, they're going to play, because throughout the whole series, they're going to be playing, and while they play, they're going to be learning. But they're going to learn values at the same time, and this is something very important that we have in our books. Okay, in addition, National Geographic Learning wants kids to learn. Okay, so throughout the entire series, kids are going to learn, but they're going to make project as well. And we know that even with little kids, it is very important. This is not going to be art and craft, but they're going to prove that what they learned is going to be shown. Okay, and parents are going to be really happy with this. Okay, and we have something very special, which is the photo arc. We have a National Geographic explorer. His name is Joel Sartori, and Joel Sartori has photographed different animals, endangered animals. So kids are going to learn, okay, with these animals, they're going to learn the alphabet. I'm not going to show the complete video because we don't have enough time, but this is something that they are going to learn. Each letter is going to be represented by one of these amazing animals, and this was possible because of this guy, Joel Sartori. So this is really amazing. Okay, and we are going to have different things for different people, materials for teachers, okay, a companion site that is going to be for teachers as well. The poster, it is going to be provided, okay, with all the pictures that I mentioned before, a complete companion site. So teachers are going to be supported with this series. We have different tools to teach. One of them is the classroom presentation tool, which is an interactive whiteboard that these teachers are going to use. And we have, as a part of our reading plan, we have big book anthologies. This collection of different readings are going to be there. Flashcards with real picture, amazing visual, engaging picture is going to be shown. And as a part of what we have right now, okay, technology, and after the pandemic, we understood that virtual tools are very important. That's why we have this tool, which name is Online Practice, okay? And that is going to be used by kids and is going to be controlled by teachers. It's a learning management system for teachers. This is, okay, a review of what I have just said. We have 3 different levels, and we explore the pre-A1. An ebook is inside that platform that I mentioned. So kids are going to have access to a physical book, to an ebook, and to exercise from a platform. And in addition, they can have access to a workbook. This is the first series that I wanted to present. Okay, I'm going to talk about another series, okay, which is Welcome to Our World. And this is something that I really want to say right now, welcome. And this is what we want to say to kids. We want to say welcome to them to this amazing world. Once again, it's a 3-level series, okay? And I would like to have like a lot of time to show you what everything is about, okay? And let me tell you that the world is waiting, and it is waiting for kids to learn about learn English with this series, okay? And the main thing about this series is that kids are going to learn English with the world, okay? This series prepare school for school, okay, and achieve real communication. And we have a special program so we can engage parents, okay, which is very, very, very important as well. Once again, we have amazing picture here. Okay, so kids are going to learn about this vocabulary with real pictures, and we are going to show people from all around the world: China, Serbia, as you can see over there, Argentina. We have a song program in this series with original songs from all around the world. Projects are part of this series, so we prepare kids for the other subjects. So it's not only learning English, it's learning English with a purpose, and learning English with when creating projects is really, really, really amazing. Okay, as I told you, okay, we achieve real communication because we are going to teach kids international songs, different songs from all around the world, and this is going to be part of this series. This is the second edition of a book. Okay, so we have new songs. We have review games in this series. Okay, this is we have new projects that we didn't have before, and of course we updated the amazing photograph that we have in this book. We have this book comes with a program, so songs can be taught. Okay, teachers can learn how to teach this song and how to teach vocabulary, how to teach the routines, how to teach the different structures with these songs. Once again, it comes with the access of a platform. This platform can be accessed from the cell phone. Okay, so parents can use their cell phone. So kids, okay, they just don't have to go to YouTube or these places, but they can, of course, access the platform and they can play in this platform because this is more or less what they have about. Okay, so I have talked about 2 ELT series, okay, but right now I want to introduce you to this new series, okay, which name is Reach for the Stars, and this is content-based English. This is intended for these bilingual schools that maybe you're a part of, okay, and this is for the 3rd level of the preschool, when kids already know how to read and how to write at least a little bit, and it is it is 1 level divided into 3 different books, the book A, B, and C, okay, and the intention of this book is to get kids ready for the world, ready for English, and ready for school, and this is very important. How are they going to get ready for school? Well, okay, with real picture, with amazing picture, and with situations from people, from kids, okay, all around the world, situations that they have, okay, but that they can express and they can learn, okay. For example, here, okay, there's a kid, okay, that can see a goat with his eyes, okay, the other one can feel, okay, with his hand, and the other one can hear a goat with his ear, and the other one can hug, okay, a goat with his arm. So they're learning the senses, and at the same time they are learning some parts of the body, okay. So this is what we want to do, okay. Once again, we want kids to get ready for the world, so we have different projects, okay, that so they can get ready for them. And of course, kids need to get ready for English. So we're going to have different songs and chants during the whole book. Okay, and okay, we have to work with fine motor skills. We have to work with the awareness of the English sounds. So that's why we're going to have phonics in this book. So kids are going to get aware of these sounds in English, okay? And again, this book comes with the access of a platform. So kids are going to have access to it. We have printed versions, okay? We have an ebook that comes inside the platform, okay? And we can have a mix of the printed and online version. We have all the support teachers need for these books, okay? So we have the teacher's book, we have the companion side where teachers are taught how to teach their routines. We have flashcards, okay? Okay, so I have already talked about 3 different series for preschoolers, okay? Let's now talk about series that we are going to have for primary school, okay? And I'm going to begin with this series, okay? And I want you to imagine, okay, a world where everything is possible. And this is the name of this series. The name of this series is Imagine, okay? And teaching with this series is as easy as ABC. And I mention this because teachers can teach this series from the student's book, okay? We do have a teacher's book, okay? But the intention for this series is it gets very easy for teachers to teach, okay? So imagine a word that can be achieved in a very easy way. This is a 7-level series. It can we can begin in the last year of preschool, but okay, we can begin in the first year of primary school, and we can finish in the 6th year. This is a 6-level series. And I want to show you what a unit of this series is about. We begin with a unit opener with an amazing picture. And remember, since that picture is amazing, students can get engaged. So they will want to learn about this, about what's happening in this picture. Okay, we continue. Okay, with, and as I told you, okay, this book is easy to teach. Okay, so we have A, B, and C. So we have presentation, we have practice, we have performance. So we can follow that cycle, and students are going to be able to produce, okay, at the end of each unit. The first section is about vocabulary, okay? Second section is about grammar in context. And once again, with the same structure, A, B, and C. So teachers can teach easily this grammar point that is related, of course, with a context, okay? In this case, they're presenting there is and there isn't, okay? Then, okay, and this is, once again, it is very important, okay? We have a reading. This reading is going to be more difficult as we increase in the level, okay? So readings for first graders are going to be easier than readings for second graders, okay? Okay. Then we have a second grammar point. Once again, grammar in context, okay? That is going to be related to the reading. Books 1, 2, 3, and 4, they have a component in phonics. And even though the intention of this book is for schools that are teaching 1 to 3 hours, the component that we have in phonics is really, 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 really strong, okay? So this can be taught from here, but we have specific activities to do in the teacher's book, okay? And then, okay, for levels 5 and 6, we have writing, controlled practice, controlled writing. So kids are going to be able to write paragraphs, to write different things, and to communicate with this skill, which is maybe not okay, the strongest one in kids, okay? We finish, okay, with a song. And songs here in primary school are not in, the intention is not for kids to learn the song, but to use it as a listening activity. So we have different things that they're going to learn here. And of course, we don't teach English just for the sake of teaching English, but we want to teach and we want to create a better world. And this is part of our mission. So that's why in our books, we're going to find different values that are going to be taught. Okay, so for example, here, a nice value, play outside in the sun. So you can activate the vitamin D that you need. So that's why we have these type of things here. Okay, in different sections, we have games and we also have videos. Okay, so this is a very complete series and it has everything inside. It has everything inside. There is a grammar helper for those who like deeper grammar. Okay, and we have extending reading. Okay, we have reading challenges throughout the book. Okay, once again, as I told you, this book is as easy as ABC. We have the digital component for students as well. We have the workbook, okay, and we have reading anthologies. So there is an anthology, a compendium of different readings for each grade. So this is part of it. And as well, okay, we have the digital components, we have the access to the platform, and we have the ebook embedded there. We have a suite, and every book, every series that I'm presenting has this suite for primary school, which is the exam view. So exams can be created in just 1 minute. Okay. The second series that I want to talk about for elementary school, for primary school, the name of this is Look. Okay, and we're going to look further. We're going to look beyond. Okay, so keep that word inside because this series is going to prepare students to take Cambridge exams. Flyers, movers, starters are the books that are going to be here. And we know that the world is an amazing place and we can get to know this amazing place with the amazing photograph that we have in National Geographic Learning. We're going to see amazing things as a space station that we have in the space. We're going to find National Geographic explorers in this series, okay? And there are 3 things, okay, that make this series really important. Okay, first, the National Geographic explorers, school trips, where kids are going to be taken to amazing place, and we understand that at this age, it is important the extended readings, okay? So we have, for example, this wonderful woman. She is from Afghanistan, okay? And she is going to tell us her story about how she had the country create schools for girls, okay? And this is something really amazing. We have school trip. Imagine, kids are going to learn routines, okay? What we call the simple present, but they're going to learn it watching a video in the space station, okay? So this is what a school trip is about. And of course, we know that readings are necessary. Kids need to learn more how to read, and we have extra readings throughout the whole unit. We, as I told you, okay, we have amazing picture inside here. And this book prepares kids so they can take Cambridge exams. So the exercises are going to be either in the book or in the workbook. So different things are going to be found there. Once again, we have access to the platform where kids are going to have access to different exercises. Teachers are supported by this companion site as well, okay? And I know that I have talked a lot, okay? And I hope that you are writing down these names, okay? Because I have already mentioned 2 series for primary. The first one, Imagine. The second one, Look, okay? And the third one, okay? We have a third one, which name is Our World, okay? And we have a lighter version of this series, which name is Explore Our World, okay? And once again, kids are going to be learning English here by getting to know the word, okay? Cross-curricular topics are going to be presented in this series. Projects are going to be a part of it. A complete video program is presented here. And kids are going to have access to 9 different readers, 9 different books for each level. So this is a 7-level series, and 6 of them have access to these readers. So we are talking about 54 different books that kids will have access to. Real word is going to be presented here. Okay, kids are going to be learning with real pictures. Okay, and these are the type of pictures. Kids from all around the world, okay, kids, okay, the same age they are. Okay, so this is more or less even an easy class, as it could be learning the parts of the body, is going to be presented with real picture. Okay, that amazing picture of 2 twins that are completely different. Okay, so these are the different type of things. As I told you, okay, we have short videos that are going to be presented throughout the whole series, okay? And grammar is presented in context, but we have access to deeper grammar if it is needed. As I told you, we need to read more, so we have not only extended reading, but we have readers. 9 different books per level are going to be presented there. Real world content, okay? And this is like the signature of National Geographic, okay? And this is one of the reasons why, okay, kids get engaged, okay, with these books. Inside the readers, we have different activities, and we have fiction and non-fiction that kids are going to learn. Different projects, depending on the age, depending on the level, that are going to be conducted, okay, so students can present a little bit more, okay, because the idea is that they make something and they show it at the end. Once again, we have access to the platform, okay, where kids are going to find not only exercises, but kids are going to find an ebook. And of course, they can manage this platform, okay, with their cell phones. Teachers are going to be supported by a companion site. We have access to different things, like, for example, the teacher's book inside that companion site. Okay, and last but not least, okay, I mentioned 3 ELT series, and the last series that I'm going to mention is not ELT, but is content-based English. And the name of this series is Reach Higher. Once again, for primary kids from 1st grade to 6th grade. And this is the last thing I'm going to talk about. Okay, and what we're looking here is to build academic skills with phonics support. This is the main thing that we are going to have in this series. And we are going to see that phonic component inside the book. Each level is divided into 2 different books, okay? And these different books, they have the main purpose here is to learn phonics, okay? But also we're going to have literature here. We're going to have fiction. We're going to have poetry. We are going to have non-fiction, okay? And when we have non-fiction, we're going to meet National Geographic people, National Geographic explorers, okay? I always say that it is not easy to find in this side of the world a family like this one, okay? A family which is a Muslim family, okay? And each unit begins with a big question, okay? For example, what makes a family? At the end of the units, kids are going to be able to answer this question, but okay, they're going to be learning this little by little. Once again, what is a community? Okay, what difference between then and now? Okay, and they're going to find, they're going to have, as I told you, okay, fiction and fiction inside this book with the component that I mentioned. Okay, readings from all around the world and the main focus in phonics. Okay, readers are going to be presented for levels 1 to 3. Okay, so we have 96 different books for this book. We have tools so teachers can use it to present in the classroom. We have access to the platform. We have ebooks as well. We have the support of a teacher's book and the support of a companion site, as well as the one that I'm showing to you just right now, okay? I have spoken a lot, okay? But this is what I wanted to transmit in, I don't know, okay, if I did it in time. I guess I did, okay? So, okay, thank you very much right now for giving me the opportunity of talking about this, and see you tomorrow where we're going to be talking about teenagers.
Thank you, Benjamin. Very interesting and useful your presentation. Thank you very much. Recuerden que tenemos un concurso especial para ustedes. Es muy sencillo participar, solo deben acompañarnos durante estos 3 días de feria virtual y seguir a Oserco en su cuenta de Instagram, @OsercoBooks. Solo eso y ya estarán participando. Si se dedican a la enseñanza de idiomas y no están seguros qué material didáctico se adapta mejor a sus necesidades, Oserco brinda asesorías personalizadas y de calidad para colegios y profesores con la finalidad de satisfacer las necesidades tanto de los alumnos como del personal docente. A continuación, nuestro siguiente invitado, él es el representante de la editorial National Geographic and Cengage, Jair Felix, National Geographic Learning Senior ELT Academic Consultant from Latin America. He has a BA in TEFL from Universidad Autónoma de Sinaloa in Mexico, and a postgraduate degree on Teachers Development from the College of St. Mark's and St. John, Plymouth, UK. Jay has been involved in language teaching and teacher training for over 23 years, and has conducted workshops on various topics such as lesson planning, discourse analysis for language teachers, action research, educational technologies, and 21st century skills, among others. Jair holds a diploma in teaching English for specific purposes and the e-tutoring certificate from the British Council. He's a frequent presenter at ELT conferences throughout Latin America. So let's welcome him, Jair.
Thank you very much. Hello, good afternoon. Greetings from Northwest Mexico. I hope you're all doing great. And I'll start by sharing my screen. As you heard, my name's Jair Felix, and I work for National Geographic Learning as the head of the Academic Services Department in Latin America. And the emphasis of our session this evening has to do with the power of content and how real-world content enhances and enriches the practice of English language teaching and learning. And that's what we're going to be talking about in the next few minutes. We're going to explore about how real-world content in its many forms can be a powerful tool for language teaching and learning. And in case you're wondering, we're going to be analyzing a lot of images, and we're going to be watching some real-world video, including the one that you have on your screens right now. Where you can see people in special containment suits that explore the massive beams of selenite inside the Cave of Crystals in Nica mine here in Mexico. And it might look cold, but the temperature inside the mine can reach 58 degrees Celsius with 99% humidity. So it's everything but cold down there. Right? And so that is the set of content that we're going to be talking about today, how powerful image powerful video, powerful storytelling can enrich and enhance the practice of English in and out of the classroom. And of course, all of the content that I'm gonna be showcasing in my presentation today comes from National Geographic Archive of Resources. At the end, we're National Geographic Learning. We're the academic educational arm of the National Geographic Society. And the reason for us to exist, if you may, is to inspire the future generation of leaders and decision makers to be better caretakers of the planet and each other, and enable them to be successful and responsible citizens of the 21st century as they learn and master English. So what we're going to be talking about today has to do with the possibility of enriching our students' comprehension and knowledge, not only with the grammar and the vocabulary of language, which is pretty much essential, but also with real world content that would inspire them to make better decisions, to take better care of the planet, and to become leaders of 21st century endeavors as they learn and master the most global and most popular and multicultural language of our times, which is English. Our philosophy, as Benjamin was telling you before, is bringing the world to the classroom and your classrooms to life. And we do all that through the power of real world content. And so I want for us to focus for a second on one specific aspect, which is life before the pandemic. And I'm gonna present a set of data to you. I want you to pay attention to the data that you have on your screens right now. And this is all pre-pandemic, pre-COVID data. And the data reads, the world's population grows by about 200,000 people. More than 8 million people travel by plane. About 200,000 people move into cities. More than 4 billion people communicate with others through their cell phones. Social media website Facebook connects over 1 billion people, and people upload more than 576,000 hours of video to YouTube. Now, my question to you, and you can answer this through the chat box, my question to you is, how often do you think this happened? What was the periodicity of this data? So more than 8 million people traveled by plane before the pandemic. How often? Every day, every week, every month, every year? What do you think the periodicity of this data is? More than 4 billion people communicated with others with their cell phones before the pandemic. How often do you think that happened? Okay, and let's see. Oh, Natalie says every day. And you're absolutely right. This was the state of the world before the pandemic. And of course, some of this data was drastically minimized and diminished because of the pandemic. And some of this data was dramatically uplifted because of the pandemic. So for example, during the pandemic and even nowadays, we don't have 8 million people traveling by plane anymore. That number decreased dramatically. But we have far more than 4 billion people communicating with others with their cell phones because of the lockdown. So some numbers were affected, but the point of this set of data is to demonstrate how pretty much globally interconnected we are. How the world now more than ever has become a global village. And there's no limits to interconnectivity and getting familiar with what's happening in the four corners of the world with just the snap of a screen by simply accessing the internet, right? This is who we are, and this is what we do, and the sort of world that we live in right now. This is pretty much the sort of reality that our students have to face daily. And as Natalie said in the chat box, this happened every day. Then the pandemic hit. and the world was drastically changed. And we're now seeing the effects of that change in education as well. And we were even capable of analyzing some of those new changes and new realities in education because of globalization and interconnectivity, even before the pandemic. Just before the pandemic, the OECD released a document that's entitled Teaching for Global Competence in a Rapidly Changing World. And they stated, as the conclusion of such document, they stated that globalization, the digital revolution, mass migration, the prospect of climate instability, and nowadays the pandemic as well, are triggering new concerns and demanding a new kind of graduate. That means that what our students need from us, from our classes, and from the materials that are presented and used in classrooms has little to do with what was popular 10, 15, or 20 years ago. There's a need for an evolution, for a revolution of the way English is taught in classes in order for students to learn and develop skills that are necessary in English to access a brighter future, right? And so the world is already demanding for a new kind of graduate. And that means that we as educators have to present them with a new set of skills, a new set of content. So what does that mean? Specifically, what kind of skills do school leavers really need? And not that long ago, the World Economic Forum conducted a survey among hundreds of CEOs, and they asked them this simple questions. What kind of skills are today's employers looking for? What skills are most desired by employers nowadays? If your students are graduating from colleges and universities or high schools, and they go out looking for a job, knocking on different companies and different factories and different offices' doors, what do you think the skills that employers and human resources managers are going to be looking for in them? Any ideas? Can you think of any specific skill that you think it's important, it's widely desired by employers nowadays? Can you let me know about your ideas in the chat box? What skills are really important? Natalie says everyday, soft skills. Soft skills such as, and I know what you mean by soft skills, and I've always joked on how those soft skills are everything but soft, right? They're the ones that are pretty much determining the future of our planet. But I totally see what you mean, Natalie, and you're absolutely right. There's an emphasis on soft skills among the skills that are searched after by employers. Absolutely. Teamwork, critical thinking, leadership, cooperation, teamwork. Absolutely. When I first read this question, when I was reading through the report that the World Economic Forum issued, I was certain that English or multilingualism, or even at least bilingualism, was going to be part of this, and also the good handling of digital technologies. I was expecting for those two skills related to language and the handling of technology, were going to be included on the list. And to my surprise, this was the top 5 that was issued as a result of this survey. Number 5 was the ability to coordinate with others. Apparently, what employers, what industries, companies are looking for nowadays is people with abilities to collaborate with each other. People with abilities to reach consensus, to reach agreements among them so that they can work in a coordinated way. So people employers are looking for people with abilities to collaborate, and work in teams effectively. And they're also looking for people with abilities to manage teams. So it's not only a good team player, but also a good team leader, what they're looking for. Okay. Then they mentioned creativity. People with abilities to create something out. And I would like to make a pause here, because for a lot of us, creativity has only to do with imagination. A person with good imagination is typically labeled as a creative person, when in reality, creativity, it's not only having the ability to create vivid mental pictures, if you know what I mean, but rather is the ability to take that mental picture, take that process that you imagined up in your head, and convert that into a process that would allow for something to be created, something that it's tangible, something that it's measurable. So creativity has to do with doing, with creating, with producing. The root of the term is create, right? So they're looking for creative people, people with the ability to devise a process mentally and then follow the steps to create something out, to create an outcome. Critical thinking is on the very top of our list. The ability to read between the lines, the ability to ask the right questions and challenge the assumption, it's essential as well. And number one, complex problem solving. And that includes also resilience and motivation, and not feel threatened by problems, but rather have the right attitude towards solving problems in a variety of ways, right? So those are the things that employers are looking for nowadays. Those are the things that our students need to start developing, the skills that our students need to start developing as part of our everyday classes nowadays. So as you can see, we as language teachers have much more to do than just the typical grammar lesson or vocabulary lesson or pronunciation practice. Through the teaching of English, we can totally help our students develop abilities for thinking critically, communicate effectively, collaborate successfully, and devise creative solutions to problems, right? And this doesn't mean that we should forget about our more traditional approaches to language teaching and learning. No, your core subject is English. And so you gotta keep on teaching English. And yes, there's always a room for the grammar, the vocabulary, and the pronunciation that we typically practice in the language. And we gotta do it through listening and reading comprehension and oral production and written production. Absolutely, that's the core of our subject. But in order to help students deal with the requests of 21st century, of this world that we live in, we have to pair those traditional and core aspects of our teaching with learning and innovation skills, with 21st century skills, including, again, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And perhaps even more importantly, because of the subject that we teach, we have to also include interculturality, allowing for students to become familiar with the role of English as a truly global, a truly international language. And through intercultural content, we can promote creativity, innovation, critical thinking, communication at a very high level, right? So that has to do with the power of real intercultural content. And so just thinking on this, I have yet another question for you. You know that English is the global language of our times. On ratio of native to non-native speakers currently using English, what percentage of the world's users of English are non-native speakers? We know that there are over 2 billion people in this planet speaking in English right now. Over 2 billion people speaking in English. My question is, out of this 2 billion, what percentage would be native and non-native speakers of English? Or more specifically, what percentage of the world's users of English are non-native speakers of English? I see the chat's blinking. 60 non-native, 70 non-native. Thank you for sharing your answers. Absolutely. And you're getting close. Both the US State Department and the British Council have agreed on a ratio of 80 to 20. That means that 80% of the people that speak English in the world right now are non-native speakers of English. And only 20% of English speakers in the world are native speakers of the language, right? That means that only about 360 to 370 million speakers of English are native users of the language. It also means that the largest English-speaking country in the world is China right now. There's more people in China speaking English than there's people speaking English in the US and the UK combined. The only distinction is that Chinese English speakers are non-native. But that in the world that we live in this global village that we live in right now, is of very little importance. Having a native accent doesn't really matter that much. What really matters is your ability to comply and your ability to pass on your thoughts and your ideas in English cohesively, coherently, competitively, right? And so globalization and the fact that we're living in this global village has led to a diverse range of Englishes nowadays, right? And so a globally competent user of English shouldn't look for perfect pronunciation, but rather solid abilities to pass on and comprehend thoughts and ideas coherently, right? And so there are a lot of research and a lot of studies on how being a native or a non-native is no longer a point of discussion. What really matters is your global abilities for handling with the language. And so there are very important and interesting steps that have been taken into making English a more global practice, and including what's happening with PISA, the PISA exam. I don't know if you're familiar with PISA, but this is labeled as the world's most important exam. And they analyze students' knowledge and abilities on math, science, and language globally. And as of the latest version of the PISA exam issued in 2018, they're now including a full section on global competence. They're testing not only your knowledge of language or math or science, but they're also testing your global abilities for using such knowledge. And so my third question for you would be, what skills do globally competent students need to have? What do you think are those skills that the PISA exam and a lot of different organizations are referring to when they talk about global competence, a global competence framework? We're very familiar with language abilities, with language competence and language skills. We're very familiar with the reading skill, the writing skill, the speaking skill, the listening skill. But according to this, there's a new layer, if you may, of skills that are of equal importance for students to achieve global success nowadays. So knowing the mechanics of English is no longer enough. You got to know how to use English successfully in order to access the world and everything in it. What do you think those global competences might be? Any ideas? Let's see the chat again. Analyzing, making inferences, summarizing, absolutely. Fantastic, Isabella. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Analyzing, making inferences, summarizing, which you could perhaps wrap around the idea of critical thinking, right? Making analysis, making inferences, having the ability to summarize, they all have to do with critical thinking, absolutely. And so the OECD, and again, the PISA exam, issued this global competence framework that include knowledge, values, attitudes, and skills. And they talk about this sort of skills that are needed in order for a student to be considered globally competent. And this is a framework that we pay particular attention to at National Geographic Learning. Our goal with the course materials we create is not only to develop language learners or learners' language skills, but also to help them develop important 21st century skills and competencies, such as, again, critical thinking or intercultural communication or global awareness. So how can we get our students interested in global, local, and intercultural issues so that they want to communicate and share their own ideas and perspectives using English? And the answer to that question has to do with real world content. Content that allows for students to get familiar in English with global topics. Content that allows for students to see different perspectives of the world in English. Content that invites, that promotes, that incites students taking action in order to make our world a more sustainable place. And of course, and at the core of our programs, content, real world content that triggers effective communication desires, right? And so global topics, different perspectives, a call for action, and the ability to develop effective communication are essential to the philosophy of National Geographic Learning. And this is what we aim for when we create materials and when we train teachers on how to make the best out of training students to develop global competences. So talking about examining local, global, and intercultural issues, what we're always looking for is the power of interest. So let's look at the importance of interest in the classroom. According to Paul Sylvia of the University of North Carolina, when something is interesting, we pay closer attention, we process the information more efficiently, we employ more effective learning strategies, such as engaging in critical thinking and making connections between old and new knowledge. And overall, when we're interested in a task, we work harder and persist longer. Real world content allow for students to become interested in the practice of language, and they pay closer attention, and they process information more efficiently, and they use more effective learning strategies. They work harder, they persist longer when they're interested, right? But you might say that what is interesting to one student may not be interesting to the next, perhaps, when in reality, interesting things generally share a number of characteristics, right? What makes something interesting? Again, according to Sylvia, to be interesting, material, the content that you present to your students must be novel, complex, and comprehensible. So when you present content to your students and you make sure that that content is novel, that is, it doesn't mean new, but it means content that your students were not that aware of or didn't know much about before. content that it's novel, content that it's complex, that it challenges them, that it requires for them to pay a bit more of attention, to focus for longer. But at the same time, content that it's comprehensible, that they can truly digest and become interested in. Novelty, complexity, and comprehensibility are essential to developing or selecting the right content for teaching English in the 21st century. So how do we choose content for our language learning materials at National Geographic Learning? Well, central to everything we do at National Geographic Learning is selecting content that engages and that acts as a springboard for the kind of language learning and skills acquisition we want our students of all ages to experience. How do we choose that content? Well, we always look for content that it's, number one, authentic, content that it's global, and content that it's relevant. And let me show you quickly what we mean by these words, by content that it's authentic, global, and relevant. When we talk about content that it's authentic, we talk about topics that are real world topics, topics that your students might be familiar with or that might found meaningful, purposeful, and relevant to their lives. Content that it's not only applicable on conversations in the classroom, but rather content that they can use for researching and developing further in real life situations. Content that it's authentic, content that it's global. And this does not mean exotic. It means featuring people from all over the world doing everyday things and doing also inspiring things. So, for example, here we have Panut Hadisiswoyo, a conservationist at the Orangutan Information Center in Sumatra, in Indonesia. And we also have Wasfia Nasreen, a mountain climber, an activist, and a writer from Bangladesh. And we also see Anand Bardma, science photographer from the US. And we use them as role models for practicing the language, but also for, developing skills and abilities that have to do with creativity, with collaboration, with motivation, with resilience. Content that it's global, it's not only the cute little picture or content that it's only applicable in classroom settings. It's bringing the world to the classroom. And with that, bringing your classrooms to life. And of course, the content needs to be global, but it also needs to be relevant. Relevant topics. Topics that are developmentally appropriate. Topics that would allow for students to develop skills that are important to them beyond just the English class. Content that has to do with health and happiness, or teaching girls bravery and not perfection, or following fads and analyzing trends in the world, etc., etc. So all of those content that is content that it's authentic, content that it's global, content that it's relevant is essential to empower your students to use English successfully in the 21st century. And of course, as you can tell, we use a lot of photos and a lot of infographics. And we believe at National Geographic Learning that learning to read pictures seems to be hardwired, if you may, into us. As children, we learn to read images months before we become verbal and years before we attempt to become fluent in written language. So our strengthening our students' innate ability to identify read and understand images, or in other words, to be visually literate, is a natural scaffolding for language learning. So we believe that in order to teach English in the 21st century, you gotta help students develop that visual literacy, that ability to decode, comprehend, and produce language from images as well, right? And so photographs can provide a wow effect. Photographs can intrigue, showing unusual places or situations can draw students in, and that causes them to reach for associations and understanding through prior experiences and knowledge. Sometimes starting with the simple question, wow, where is that? And you show that to your students and you allow for them to develop further attention and look closely and start paying attention to the reading in order to find answers to their initial questions after they've analyzed the image. All of that can happen with the power of an image. Imagine, for example, presenting a photo like this to your students and asking students questions such as, how does this photo make you feel? What do you imagine the photographer was trying to capture? And what if I told you Joel Sartori, the National Geographic photographer, took this photo for the Photo Arc project, where he's trying to photograph as many endangered species as possible? Does that change how you feel about the photo? It perhaps allows you to create an emotional connection towards it. And according to Serena Triaca, the potential of photography is more than being simply a reproduction of reality. The potential can be found in its ambiguity, in its ability to connect with our emotions, to invoke deduction, speculation, or even fantasy. So when we use those powerful images, those powerful photos to introduce a topic, to capture your students' attention, you're not only developing visual literacy, you're also provoking the ideal state for language acquisition. And that should always be our ultimate goal when teaching the language. And we know that great photos can aid in comprehension. Great photos can get students talking. Great photos can drive meaningful communication in and out of the classroom. But how can looking at pictures make my students better readers and writers, perhaps? How can we take the power of an image further to help our students develop reading and writing skills? Well, simply by using the power of it. Take a look at this image that you have on the screen right now. And imagine using this picture in your classroom and asking your students things like, what's going on in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? Do you agree with your partner's opinion or not? Why? What do you think the person in the car down here is thinking? What more can you find? Etc., etc., etc. And these are, deceptively simple open-ended questions. The goal is to help students identify detail and make observations. Practicing visual thinking skills with these images can be fun and quickly or trigger a quick activity, but it can also help students develop reading and writing skills. So you can have your students use those visual skills in order to slow down, to be more methodical, to notice details, to make connections, to ask questions, to build on others' observations, to use personal knowledge of the world to figure out what's happening in the photo. And the thing is that too often students want to hurry up and make meaning via a quick skim or a cursory glance, if you know what I mean, when reading a text. And visual skills can transfer and help them to be better readers and better writers. We want for students to slow down, to be more methodical, to notice details, to ask questions, to make connections. Are those skills useful in reading and writing? Of course they are. And so the power of real world photo, of real world images, of real world video is applicable to not only listening and speaking, but reading and writing as well. So in that sense, you are covering the full approach, the full spectrum that we talked about before. You're not only dealing with language skills, but you're also dealing with 21st century innovative skills. At the end, what we do at National Geographic Learning and what we recommend teachers to pay attention to is the things that would drive students' attention, that would capture students' motivation. And through photos, real world photos, you can do that. You can show the real world. You can have students develop human interest in the topic of the class, and you can arouse their curiosity. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by this. I'm going to show you some images, and I want you to tell me what you think in the chat box. Let's take a look at these two images. Which of the two is more real world? They're trying to represent the same, a group of children having fun. Which is more real world? The one in the right. Thank you, Isabella. Exactly. Letter B. Thank you, Natalie. Fantastic. Why is it more real world? Because it's authentic. Because picture B is authentic. It has a sense of realism that you can't see on A. A is a beautiful photo, but it looks staged. B is a far more authentic photo, right? Now, which has more human interest of these two, A or B? Which has more human interest? What would you say? A, exactly. They're both representing perhaps the same, right? People in water. But then letter A perhaps is depicting a situation that could happen, which is perhaps someone in the middle of a flooding. Whereas letter B, it doesn't even look real at all. It's completely staged, right? And then finally, which of these two inspires curiosity? Which inspires curiosity of the two? What would you say, A or B? Okay. A, exactly. Whereas letter B looks like a catalog photo, letter A is a real photo of a janitor dusting an exhibition at a museum. That's what's happening in letter A, right? It's a real photo, an authentic photo, showing the usual in an unusual way. And that's what we need to do in order to help our students develop interest in the topics that we're presenting in our classes, showing the usual in an unusual way. Because in that way, we're also going to be helping our students get ready. Because fortune, according to Louis Pasteur, fortune favors the prepared mind. It's not a matter of luck. It's a matter of preparation and knowledge. And to be prepared for today's workforce, informed about important issues, and able to understand the complex world we live in, all people must have a solid and global education in science, mathematics, and technology. So it is about time that we start talking about real world topics in science, in technology, in art, in history, as we teach the most global of all languages, which is English. Let me give you an example. An example of a global topic perhaps might be bee colony collapse, right? A topic that is of all humans' interest, how bee colonies are collapsing all over the world, how we're destroying the ecosystem for bees to survive. Would that work to drive communication in a language learning classroom? Well, it depends, right? If you presented that information by means of using a chart like this, if you just put a chart like this in front of your students, probably they're not going to be interested at all. They're not going to pay attention to it. But if you establish a discussion through communication, through collaboration, through critical thinking, and you presented an image like this, an information graphic like this, and you told your students, okay, guys, I'd like to have you focus on food, and let's discuss in pairs. What foods have you eaten recently that would be gone if bees disappeared? And then they read, they analyze, and they start developing an awareness that exceeds linguistic acquisition, that gets into getting real world knowledge, real world content to enhance their everyday behavior. It's interesting, right? You learned something new about a fairly complex topic, the impact of bees on what we eat. And it was made comprehensible with images and text. And you also help students collaborate, think critically and creatively, and communicate with each other with a topic that would be otherwise difficult for them to understand. So this has also to do with the power of real world content. Today, creators of high stakes tests have taken note of the growing importance of the visual content. Beginning with test takers of the SAT exam, for example, students now encounter graphics, not only in the math section, but also in the reading, writing, and language section. So if that's included in an exam as important as SAT or PISA, perhaps it is about time that we start presenting students with visual literacy practice as they learn and practice English. Because at the end, images and text have an added advantage over text alone. As dual coding takes place in the memory, it is easier for the student to make cross connections between the two different codes and later retrieve information. Researchers at the University of Twente in the Netherlands studied the neurological activity in students and found that graphs elicited roughly 60% more electrical activity than text or equations, and 40 to 50% more than pictures and tables. So it's been demonstrated, scientifically demonstrated, that when students encounter infographics like this on the screen, it's easy to imagine their brains lighting up like a street in Tokyo, for example. It's the acquisition happens at a far faster and more solid way. And of course, being able to read and understand information graphics is a key skill for success in higher education, in careers and daily life in general. We got to remember that we live in a data-rich world. with graphics popping up in everything from advertising to political campaigns to household bills. So being a confident consumer of that information is critical. I would also say that being a critical consumer of information is also essentially important. So take a look at this information graphic. Does something look not quite right? This is an official graphic issued by Microsoft. But when we first saw it, we detected that something was not quite right in it. What is wrong with this graphic? Any idea? Look at the proportions in the charts. How many rows are needed to represent 100 million? It's 3 and looks like a half, right? But then when you look at 117 million, it turns out that we're doubling up the bar, but we're only talking about 17 million extra. So the proportion is off. See what I mean by this? So we need to start helping our students analyze this critically through authentic, global, relevant content. And that's what we do at National Geographic Learning. And so as part of this idea, we also put a lot of attention to the concept of critical thinking. Globally competent learners can or should be able to access, analyze, and critically evaluate messages delivered through media. Critical thinking is very important. A key aspect of global competence is now critical thinking. For centuries, English language teaching has included what's known as lower order thinking skills. We want for our students to memorize English, to understand the language, and at some point to develop abilities to apply the language successfully. But according to Bloom's taxonomy, these are just basic comprehension skills. In order for our students to reach higher order thinking skills, to develop abilities to create language on their own, they have to first analyze and evaluate language critically. Critical thinking is essential. And nowadays, and now more than ever, because of the infodemic we all have experienced over the past few years, it is of extremely high importance for our students not only to memorize the language, but being able to analyze it and evaluate it further and use it as a springboard into more creative aspects of language. Okay? And so with that in mind, we started researching on critical thinking. And we now know that most students simply have very little in the way of critical evaluation skills. And students may tell you they don't believe everything they read on the internet. They don't believe in everything they get on their WhatsApp messages. But guess what? They do. And so it is of extreme importance as we teach the most global and popular language of our times to help our students develop critical thinking skills. We don't want for them to be like the people that took part on this project that was originally released a few years ago. There was this project in which a web page was created, and there was some advertisement on a campaign for helping save the endangered Pacific Northwest tree octopus from extinction. Have you ever heard of an octopus that lives on trees? Where do octopus typically live? Do they live in water, in the ocean? Do they live on the up in the mountains? Do they fly up in the skies? Do they live on trees? Where do they live? And of course, you can now tell me, well, that's a pretty obvious question. Octopus live in water. Well, there was this research to analyze critical thinking on regular people that actually produced these oaks in which they were asking people to donate in order to help save the endangered Pacific Northwest tree octopus. And there were thousands, if not millions of people that actually wanted to collaborate on this, which is non-existent. It's an oaks. And it just demonstrated how little critical thinking is on regular people nowadays, okay? And so once it was revealed that it was an oaks, a lot of conclusions were made, right? And it says, for example, it must be true. I read it on the internet. Elusive tree octopus proves how gullible web generation is, right? And so I have a final task for you. And with this, we're going to call it a day. I have a final task for you. I have 4 images on the screen. Image number 1 is of a leaping shark that won the National Geographic Photo of the Year a few years ago. Image number 2 is about a creature that can age backwards that was found by researchers not that long ago. Image number 3 is of a giant squid that washed up on a California beach a few years ago, a giant squid. And image number 4 is about a giant camel fossil that was found in the Arctic. 2 of these 4 photos are a lie. They're an hoax. Using your critical thinking skills, I want you to tell me which 2 out of the 4 are a lie, which are not real. Take your time, analyze the photos, and tell me which 2 out of the 4 are not real. Let's see if you can find them. Ludmika says 1 and 4. So you're saying that 1 and 4 are not real. Isabella says 2 and 3 are not real. Interesting. Very good. Gisela says 2. Nitsi says 2 and 4. Thank you. Let me give you the answers.
None of
1
them.
and 4, number 3. Okay, let's take a look. The first one was the photo of a leaping shark that won the National Geographic Photo of the Year award before. And that is false. The photo, if you look at it, it's too perfect to be true. This is the real photo of the shark that won the, this is the real image that won the award. Now, when you compare it, you see major differences, right? So what we need to train our students on as we teach them English is also to perhaps telling if a photo is real, looking for a source. Where does the photo come from? Is there a photographer's name? Can you find any information about them on the internet? Look for clues in the photo. Sometimes the direction of the light and the shadows is wrong. Is anything in the photo too big or too small or too perfect? Is anything missing? And with that analysis, we can actually realize if the image that we're being exposed to is real or not, right? And we're using critical thinking. We're analyzing, we're evaluating. See my point here? Number 2, a creature that can age backwards. That is true. It does exist. And again, we can do a simple Google research and we're going to find that there's this creature that apparently could live forever. This amazing species has the ability to age backwards from an adult stage to an immature stage over and over again. And we have the name, we can look it up on the internet and realize through evaluation and analysis if the image is real or not. Okay. Number 3, the photo of a giant squid that washed up on a California beach. That is false. And again, you look at it and you question your assumptions. A giant squid measuring a whopping 160 feet. Is that even possible? Bigger than a whale. Analyze details in the photo. Evaluate the source. If you get a photo or any piece of information from a source that it's called delightlybraised-turnip.com, chances are it's not real. Chances are it's just an hoax or perhaps a meme, right? This is the actual photo of a whale that was found on the coast of California. And this is the actual squid. So what they did was simply to Photoshop that. Okay. So what we're talking about is simply the ability to help students develop critical thinking by questioning assumptions, by analyzing evidence, by evaluating stories' credibility. And through that, we can empower our students' use and handling of the language. The last one was a giant camel fossil that was found in the Arctic. Some of you said this was true, and you were right. This is true. And it's all over the news. And yes, even though camels are typically related to deserts now, apparently the Arctic was a desert millions and millions of years ago. So there are fossils of camels, of giant camels in the Arctic. And you can Google it up, you can look it up, and you're going to find prestigious publications like the BBC and even scientific forums talking about this. Okay. You can go to real live web pages in order to enhance your practice of English and also trigger critical thinking further. And so as my time is up, I don't want to take any more of your time. And so I'm not going to play the video that I had planned to use. But I want to conclude my session by reminding you of the power of real world content and what we've covered today. The power of real world content has to do with how it drives motivation, how it gives students a purpose for real communication through topics that are meaningful, purposeful, and relevant. Real world content makes language learning more effective and more memorable. And it helps students develop the skills they need to succeed in this century by providing them with tools that have not only to do with language skills, but also with 21st century soft skills that are pretty much the ones that employers all over the world are looking for. So the invitation is for you language teachers to start using real world content as you teach and practice English. And with that, allow for students to learn English in a far more comprehensible, meaningful, and resourceful way in order to access 21st century successfully. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your participation, for your attention. And I understand that we have now some room for questions. So if you have any particular questions to ask, I'm all yours. Also, if you want to get a copy of this presentation, or if you want to get familiar with what we do at National Geographic Learning, there's our contact information on your screens. Drop us a line and we'll be more than happy to assist you. Thank you very much. And I'm open to questions now, if any.
you very much. So, thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much again. So now we have this time for questions. Tenemos esta oportunidad para hacer todas las preguntas, dudas. El chat está abierto. Les voy a pedir que, por favor, si tienen la oportunidad, no solo dejen sus preguntas, si quieren prender sus cámaras, también lo pueden hacer para esta parte de las preguntas. Si todo sale bien, ok, aquí hay una pregunta, dicen para Benjamin, if digital versions from your books, do they have printable activities? Benjamin?
Hola, ¿cómo están? Okay, can you please repeat the question? If the digital versions have?
If they have some printable activities that you can bring into the classroom, they're asking?
Yeah, inside each series that I presented has a companion site. In those companion sites, you can find worksheets. It means that if you select the digital component, okay, you will have access to different worksheets that can be printed. So the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you. There's another question over here for Stephanie. Yeah, Stephanie's here. Is she here? It was about, do you have support material for the teachers? So no, so let's continue if there's any other question in the chat. So I think that was kind of like the only question that we had until now. I think that, well, that was amazing. Thank you very much to all of you. I think we're gonna like stop the questions over here unless we have any other doubt. Okay. No. Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for to all of you for being here and being part of this amazing book fair. Gracias de verdad por estar aquí. Vamos a seguir entonces. Ya casi cerramos la jornada del día de hoy, pero antes le vamos a dar la bienvenida a nuestro último invitado, Nicholas Dawson. So Nicholas Dawson qualified as primary school teacher and started teaching in 1967. From 1968 to 79, he taught English in Britain, Libya, and Italy. He was an international teacher trainer for Pearson Education from 1979 until 2013 and worked in more than 60 different countries around the world. His major interest is in learning theory. So, Professor Nicholas, the floor is all yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you noticed, but in the tie that I was wearing in that photograph, it has a jigsaw puzzle of different colors connected together. And I always wear that tie when I am working with primary school teachers, because I think that children learn by making connections in the way that jigsaws go together and make connections. But that's not the topic of my talk. The topic of my talk is listening, the primary learning skill. Now, if we move to the next slide, we know the four basic skills: listening, reading, speaking, and writing. We have, of course, listening and reading, the two receptive skills, and speaking and writing, the two productive skills. But I think that we should include now viewing, because that is the way in which most of our students experience the world, by viewing videos and by viewing the internet web pages and by through viewing interactions. Now, let's go back to the beginning of listening. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, if we think about babies, babies begin to hear their mother tongue even before they are born, when they are still inside the mother. Because when the mother is speaking in her mother tongue, her diaphragm is moving up and down in order to speak the language, to speak her language. And therefore the rhythms of that language are actually being absorbed by the baby fetus inside the mother, even before the baby is born. But after the baby is born, we don't really expect the baby to start saying the first word until about 11 or 12 months. But before they say that first word, they can already understand many, many different things which are said to them, which are addressed to them. So they can understand about 50% of the utterances are said to them before they actually begin to speak. Now, when the first word comes out, it is very exciting for the parents. According to my mother, my first word was more. Now, do you think that was really my first word? No, I think that my first word was more, because when you are feeding a baby with a spoon, you are constantly putting the spoon in the baby's mouth and taking it out and saying, more, more, more. And babies love intonation patterns. And they are going to imitate that intonation pattern much more quickly than a sort of a statement pattern. So I think my first word was more, more, imitating my parents. Okay, moving on. If we go to the next slide. Okay. Yeah, sorry. I just repeat this. On the next slide about reading, coming up now. That's it. Okay. Babies learn to read by hearing stories read by their mothers, usually just before bedtime or during the day, and so on. Part of reading a story, and stories and books become exciting for children because of the colored pictures. And when you are reading a story to a child, it's a good idea to point to the different characters in the pictures. And perhaps as the baby gets a bit older, to point to the word on the page where the name of that character is listed in the text. So the child begins to make a connection between those black marks on the page and the language which you are creating. They begin to discover that books are full of voices, of different voices, and of adventures. So they discover something more attractive about books. So if we move to the next slide. If we share a story, as I said, by pointing at the characters in the pictures and pointing at the character names on the page, children discover that books have voices and have adventures. And we see there the child pointing at the book. And it is through touching the book that they begin to make connections between the story in the book and the content of the book itself. If we just move on one more. Okay, essentially there are two types of listening. Listening for comprehension, and this involves very often playing a recording, and then students answer comprehension questions. And that sort of thing is important for traditional examinations. More important is actually listening for interaction, listening in order to contribute to conversations. And that's important for business and for future life. Now, one of the things that we assume is that listening is taking place in the classroom. But in fact, today, a lot of interaction is going to take place by mobile phone. So really, our students ought to be learning to listen through the phone rather than listen face to face. If you listen face to face, then you can see the mouth movements of the speaker, and you can guess what the speaker is saying. One activity I used to use with primary school teachers was, can you identify which day of the week I am saying? Look carefully. Wednesday. Now, just say the different days of the week: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They each have a different mouth movement. And children learn to look at the teacher's mouth and understand what the teacher is saying by lip reading. One of the things that I discovered only recently when we started wearing masks was that deaf people suddenly could not understand what other people were saying. They couldn't understand because the mouth was covered and they couldn't see the lips. This is why it's very important for teachers always to face the class. Do you notice the way in which your control of the class disappears when you turn to the whiteboard or to the blackboard? You know, when you turn your shoulders around, your control of the class disappears because they can't see your face. Now, listening face to face is a valuable form of listening for interaction, but learning to listen back to back, where you can't see each other's faces, that's a very, very important type of listening. It's the type of listening to a telephone or listening to let us say, a video or something like this. Now, if we are going to be involved in listening for interaction, we're thinking about listening and responding. On the telephone, on video chat, and things like this. Now, all of you have been involved in having conversations by telephone and video conversations and things like this. How do you have to modify your language when you are having a telephone or video conversation? Any comments in chat?
No, nothing.
Nothing's coming up. Okay. Many years ago, in the days when journalists used to telephone their news stories into newspapers in a form of dictation, there would be somebody in the office who would be writing down what they were saying. And this created one of the worst mistakes ever published in a newspaper. It was published in a newspaper in Dawson City in Canada. The headline of the newspaper said that 30,000 pigs were floating down the river, the Dawson River. 30,000 pigs were floating down the river. When they contacted the journalist and asked him whether this was true, he said, no, of course it's not true. What I said was 30 sows and pigs were floating down the river. 30,000 pigs were floating down the river. And that had been written down as 30,000 pigs had been floating down the river. If we think about listening for comprehension, with listening, if one is writing materials for comprehension, the main rule for all teachers is control the language and control the task. That is to say, simple language in what you are writing, and also simple activities in terms of the task. If we think about a true-false task, a true-false task is very easy because the students have only two options to choose from. A slightly more difficult version of this is correction, where you read out a sentence which is related to the listening text that they have listened to, which contains mistakes. The students then have to try to correct the mistake. Now, you have given them most of the sentence, so they don't have to create that. All they have to do is to correct the information in the sentence, in their reply. If you write comprehension questions which begin who, where, why, how, and so on, these are going to be very difficult questions because the students have to construct sentence answers to these questions. So it becomes, although you may have simplified the text, it becomes a much more difficult task because what the students have to produce is much more difficult. Now, another way of doing this, here we are thinking about very young children to start off with, is answering questions, simply demonstrating your understanding through a physical activity. So if we go to the next slide, sorry, the next slide after that. Sorry, the next one. This one, yeah. Okay, point to the window, sit on your chair, touch something small, touch your head, open your book, touch your ears. All of those are simple instructions that the teacher can give to the class. And the class can demonstrate their understanding of what has been said by carrying out the activity. It's a good way with a class of young children to begin your lesson with activities like that. Because apart from anything else, they have just come from a lesson which has been done in their native language, and their brains are thinking in their native language. If you carry out a very simple activity like this, they begin to start being accustomed to the English language, to the fact that you are speaking in English. If we go to the next slide. So, if you start your lessons with physical response instructions, they can be made more difficult by adding conditionals. For example, if you can swim, sit down. If there is an M in your name, fold your arms. If you know the capital of Peru, hold up your hand. If you were born in December or April, touch your ear. If you bought chocolate yesterday, touch your mouth. You can see that these instructions can be graded according to the language which you have, to the level of language that the students understand, and the language which you have introduced. So let's just move on. Dictation is a very old-fashioned type of task, but dictation can be varied in many different ways. For example, you can be reading a short text to the students, and you have written on the board a list of words which the students have copied down. They will tick off the words as they hear them. Now, of course, the way in which you make this exercise more interesting is that the words which you've written on the board, the text that you read out does not actually contain all of those words. There are 2 or 3 words which are not included in the text. So the student who has just gone through it very quickly and ticked all of the words is not going to be very successful in that task. Another example could be reading off a section, number of complex sentences containing numbers. Now, listening to numbers accurately is something very, very important for students in business. So if you hear something like the retail price index has risen by 5% since the start of the year. Now, you wouldn't expect students to be able to understand that sentence, but if they only have to write down the number, then they have to identify 5% and write that down. Another thing you can do is to give the students the words of a song in jumbled order. And students have to write them down in the correct order. So, yesterday, far my troubles seemed all away. I think you can identify the song. Obviously, the correct reform of the song would be, yesterday, all my troubles seemed so far away. So simply doing this in a jumbled form makes students listen carefully and write down the words in the correct order. And again, they can listen to the song as many times as they like in order to get the in order to write down the correct form. If we move to the next slide, if you want to help with dictation, if you give them the first letter of, let us say, the missing word in a sentence, the first letter is a suggestion for a word. And the dictation then becomes simply a spelling test, not a listening test, but a spelling test. If you give the last letter of each word, then giving the last letter is a confirmation. It's a confirmation that the word that the student has guessed is actually correct because it matches the last letter which you have given. I don't know what happened during the pandemic in Venezuela, but did you have schools closed? Were schools closed during the pandemic?
Yes, they were.
Yeah. And did teachers have to give lessons by video?
Yes, some of them, yes, they had digital connection to do so, yeah.
It's very, very difficult to teach by video. And it's very, very difficult for students to learn by video, by the video lesson which is actually coming to them on screen. This involves very complex forms of listening. When two people are in different places, one of the problems is here and there. What's the meaning of here and there when you're in two different places? And in a recorded conversation, if we think about letter writing, think about ancient recordings, or we think about letters. If you read a letter, the reader of the letter and the writer of the letter are in different places and in different times. So how do they make this connection? And this is why I think it's tremendously important in as far as listening is concerned, that although face-to-face listening in the classroom is tremendously important, and the type of presentations that we've seen in the previous presentations of students doing presentations in the classroom, That sort of thing is tremendously important. Learning to listen to each other and to watch the way in which the mouth is working in order to understand what is being said. Those things are tremendously important. But at the same time as we are teaching them, we should also teach these telephone skills, the skills of communicating when you cannot see the other person. Now, I have contacts all around the world. I have a friend in Medellin, in Colombia, and we contact each other through text message. It's possible we have the technology to speak to each other by telephone, but I know that forming sentences in English is very, very difficult for my friend in Medellin. But if we operate by text message slows down the conversation, and there is more time to be able to create an answer or create a response to what you have read. So conversations by text and conversations by telephone, I think, are tremendously important skills for students to learn. Okay, if we just go to the end, to the things that you have to remember. Physical response, graded instructions made suitable for all ages and language levels. Now, graded response activities, I have done these with adults as well. And it's quite fun because adults treat it as a game and children treat it as a game. And of course, it is a game, but they are demonstrating their comprehension through their physical activities. And with dictation, remember that dictation is not just for spelling. It's also for listening. So remember the trick about the first letter being a suggestion and the last letter being a confirmation. Okay. Any questions?
So, do we have any questions for Professor Dawson? Professor, thank you very much. That was amazing. Thank you very much, and thank you for being part of our today's fair. Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to mention to everyone that at the moment it is 19 minutes past midnight for me. So it's been quite an effort to make this, to do this plenary for you. But anyway, thank you very much.
We really appreciate it, Nick. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, best wishes for the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Antes de que se retiren, les voy a pedir, por favor, si pueden acercarse a nuestro chat y hacer clic en el link que les vamos a colocar para una encuesta. Les agradezco muchísimo si hacen clic en el link y responden las preguntas ahí. Está en el chat ahorita, lo pueden ver en el chat. Les recordamos también que pueden visitarnos en nuestra nueva dirección del Centro Plaza, Torre C, piso 14, oficinas A y B de Los Palos Grandes, aquí en la ciudad de Caracas. Y bueno, finalmente agradecerles a todos por su participación. Así damos por terminada la jornada de este día. Les agradecemos profundamente a cada uno de ustedes por acompañarnos el día de hoy. Los esperamos mañana el viernes a partir de las 4 p.m. y recuerden @osercobooks en Instagram. Gracias.